Information eliminates deformation. Watch, listen, stay tuned. Impact Matters with Madima. Changing perspectives, growing the nation.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am super excited to welcome you back to The Matters with Madima! Thank you. Today, I will be bringing on stage a delectable, exquisite, spontaneous guest in the building with the topic DNA, paternity, fraudulency in the world. Now come with me as I bring to the house a senior associate of the LX Partners, a leading full-service commercial law firm in Nigeria. She is a depression counselor, a visionary, and a chairperson of the John and Rebecca EBOGBO Foundation, and also a distinguished man who is a member of the Association of Pediatric Surgeons in Nigeria. He is the Senior Special Assistant to the Minister of FCT Health and Hospitals. He is also a woman advocate. Do not touch the dial, just stay tuned as I bring you back here with my beautiful guest. Thank you.
Tuned. Impact Matters with Madima. Changing perspectives, growing the nation.
You are highly welcome, sir, and you are highly welcome too. This is the Impact Matters with Madima. On the 10th of January, 2021, yes, the Vanguard newspaper published an article saying Nigeria is ranked the second highest in paternity fraudulency in the world. I mean, how is this so? I happen to get a child. This child, I have been with this child. I literally saw this child grow up for over 20 years of my life. And today, I just discovered that this child was not my son. Regarding this, right? What do you think, who at this point would you blame in terms of family structure? Who would you blame? But anyways, before we get on there, I would really like you to please describe to us or tell us what does DNA strand means about. Just tell us, please.
Thank you very much, Madina. DNA is an acronym for. No need to go and start confusing people, but it's an acronym to show the nuclear material within the makeup of any living thing, either a plant or a human being. In this case, is if each family has the same, there's some semblance or resemblance in their DNA. If you notice, some Africans, Afro-Americans recently, after about 10, 15 years ago, decided to start tracing their genealogy to Africa. And it's DNA testing that they used. They took their own DNA material and they compared to DNA material. There were some banks, some DNA banks in some places. And they were able to trace that some of them came from West Africa. Some even was able to trace their own to Ghana. So it's a genetic material that you get from human cells, and with that, looking at it through electron microscope, you can see that this one is this one resembles this, and this one does not resemble that. I'm just trying to make sure I use the layman's language. So that way, you can actually confirm that somebody fathered a child. And then when we go to the second part that we're talking about, if suddenly somebody wakes up 20 years later and you do a DNA test on the child and they do it yourself and you find there's no congruity in it, that means somebody.
There's a mix somewhere.
There's a mix somewhere.
Okay.
I know that in normal human listening, they'll say the woman cheated. But it's not as simple as that. There are two things we need to consider here. First of all, the integrity of the test has to be ascertained. The lab that it was done, was it a lab you can trust? In testing, in doing laboratory testing, there are two things we look at. We look at, in fact, three. Two of them are in the technology part, one of them is in the human part. there's something we call the human equation. The human equation now comes into the dexterity of the laboratory scientist. Is he or she doing all the things that needs to be done to get a good test? And then on the machine side, there are some machines you have to calibrate every 48 hours. If you don't calibrate them, they'll give you a false result. So are those machines properly calibrated? And then the last one was if it's a reagent, what the correct reagent to use and all that. So those are the things that will now say whether it is a positive and completely positive or a false positive or false negative test, as it were. Okay. Then the other component is the human element. Once you say, this is a man that is saying that this is not my child, but they've done the DNA, the first accusation will go to the woman. The woman has cheated on me, went and had an extramarital affair and got a baby and now say it is mine. But it's not as simple as that. We've seen cases where, especially when the woman delivered in the hospital and babies were switched.
Oh, okay.
Babies were switched. Either they switched intentionally or occasionally unintentionally, especially where you have a large number of babies being delivered. Just like the baby factory we have in Nigeria is the Island Maternity Hospital in Lagos. They have hundreds of babies being delivered every week. And they have a large maternity.
I'm worried I was born there.
So you can have
okay, you can have such.
You can have an intentional switch, or you can have a mistaken or unintentional switch.
Okay, yes, okay, that's fine. But before we actually proceed from there, I would actually like to come to her, Ma, right? At this point, it has happened. Okay, and I am super worried.
Okay.
Now, how do you think, or I mean, is there a law to this? What is the law guidance behind this very situation in the law firm?
Well, so in the legal perspective, there's the marital aspect of parental relationship. Some parents are married, some are not. Some are married under the act, some are married under tradition. I hear that in a couple of traditional settings, when a child is born into the confines of a marriage, it doesn't matter whether that child was brought through infidelity. The child born into a marriage is going to be the child of the father in that marriage. So sometimes I hear this a lot of non-Easterners. They say, if you bring out a child from somewhere else, so long as you give birth to that child, within the confines of a traditional marriage, that child belongs to the father. Whoever the husband to that woman is at the time is the father. In the law aspects, when people are married and there's a situation that arises that gives room to doubt for whether the child belongs to the father, as the child knows who the father is, something must have arisen. There may have been suspicions. Sometimes some of these things happen as a result of doubtful genital testing, because sometimes you have the father is AA, the mother is AF, the child is a seeker, and you're trying to balance the equation, and you're saying it's not supposed to be possible if this child was a product of our affairs or something. But if that happens because of the marriage, when the man discovers it, he can there's something called destitution. He can sever his fatherly relationship. But other than the legal aspect, there is more of the emotional, the trauma, the psychological.
Exactly. Yes. So let's come on to that.
So it's there for the woman, it's there for the man, it's there for the child. If a child has grown and attained adulthood, it's really difficult to convince that child that, for example, if I were his child and I know him to be my father and I grew under his care, and tomorrow something happens and I find out that he's not my father, I won't be eager to find my father. This is the father I know. This is the father I want to know.
Exactly.
How am I going to move on from this knowledge?
Exactly. Okay.
But I think overall, the coping mechanism or how to deal with it would be determined from how the subject matter arose. Did it arise out of a case of infidelity? Is there going to be acrimony between the parents on account of this discovery? There's a lot of issues to be considered.
To this, sir, do you think, could you please tell us how you think this could be found out?
Yeah, I think she even alluded to how some of them will come. Maybe occasionally there isn't even any suspicion from the man at all. It's just an incident. Like it happened to me when I was a young medical doctor in the 80s in Kaduna. I had this couple, they were my patients, and then the woman had a baby, not in our hospital, but I think 2-3 years later, they brought the child to the hospital. And one look I took at the child, I knew the child was a sick one because there are some people who cause for diagnosis. But I didn't want to conclude. And then I told the woman, I'm sorry, we need to run a genotype test on your child. And I asked the woman whether she knew her genotype. She said yes. I said, if you wouldn't mind, we run your genotype. So we ran the genotype because the woman was saying that her child wasn't a sick one. So when we ran the genotype, the child came out SS. So the day the woman came and said, I told her that the child was SS, she threw a lot of tantrums. I said, what nonsense is this? I am AS, my husband is AA. There's no way we can have SS.
Okay.
I said, madam, I didn't do that, but if you like, you can go somewhere else. But because I knew there was going to be acrimony, I actually did what I call other tests. That's a term we use in medicine. Go to another person to check out what you have done. So I went to 2 other laboratories, and they all confirmed SS before I even presented this thing.
Oh.
So she made so much noise, abused me in the hospital, and I told the woman to cool down. And I did get angry because I knew there's an emotional, it's going to be a major problem. So when she threw all the tantrums, I said, madam, you're AS, isn't it? You say your husband is AA. Why don't we invite your husband? Let's do his a genotype to confirm. He said she saw her husband is AA. I said, but this child is SS. If you like, go check it anywhere. So when she was about to leave, and I said, madam, I'm going to call your husband. Your husband is going to come here for us to check. She went to the door, came back, collapsed into the chair, started crying.
She knows something was wrong.
So, and then I gave her tissue paper to clean her tears, and I said, okay, what do we do now?
Okay.
She said, actually, that she had an extramarital affair.
Okay, now, good. Now,
that's why the pregnancy came about.
Okay.
But she didn't know at that time. She thought that child was actually her husband's, but she didn't know that it wasn't.
Okay. Well, now, so as regards to this, right, when a situation like this is brought, okay, to judgment, okay, now, who do you think, or who's really going to be on the winning side at this point, and how would this case be judged?
Okay.
Yes, guys, it's been a very super amazing one all through with my very beautiful and amazing guests in our midst. Do not touch the dial, as I will be back here on the station. Stay tuned.
Information eliminates deformation. Watch, listen, stay tuned. Impact Matters with Madima. Changing perspectives, growing the nation.
So, Mrs. Rebecca, as you happen to be a depression counselor, at this end, and as regards to what he said, you know very well that this would really, really tamper emotions.
Right.
Good. So, as regards to that, I mean, if this case is taken, okay, to the court, I mean, how is it going to be looked at or into? Yeah, and then who do you think at this point would actually be more put to blame here?
Well, so obviously the woman.
Okay, just as everyone would say.
Yeah, because well, that's what everybody would say. But like he has already told us that there are a couple of issues to look at.
Okay, now, so can we talk about what we feel that can be the cause of this? Can we talk about that before we get on to the main thing?
Yeah, so like definitely infidelity is always the number one point of call. A lot of people believe that once there's um, a scenario where the father is found not to be the biological father of the child, the woman definitely, she had committed adultery at some point. That's the first point of call. But sometimes, like you also said, that may not be the case. I've also heard of a story where a woman, kept insisting even after the DNA showed that the father was, there were no matches, and she insisted that she didn't have an affair.
Okay.
And this went on for years and years, and eventually they said, okay, let us test your DNA with the child. And she didn't match the child either. So it turns out that the child is not even hers, it's not even for that family.
The father. Okay.
And a scenario where, multiple children born every minute, they're trying to cut the cords, they can be swapped in between. And that was what happened in their own case. Fortunately, they went down, many years down the line, got everybody that birthed on that same day to bring back their children. They were able to locate the actual child.
Okay. Okay.
But it created a lot of emotions because, the family of the man already were accusing the woman. The woman was depressed because everybody would not believe her. Even after it became revealed that there was nothing of her fault in the whole process, she had been, disreputed. And how many people that heard that she committed adultery will also hear that that was not the case? When things like this happen, I think that the first thing the parties involved should do is to calm down. It's very important. A lot of things can go wrong from that moment. If you're not careful, even that child can commit suicide. The child is in the middle of all of this. And before we start finding out the true facts from the different facts, if a woman actually has, been unfaithful to her husband, she shouldn't let it linger. If it is obvious that the truth is going to come out anyway, as a depression counselor, my position is don't let it go out there. Resolve this matter as quickly as you can. Within, yeah. Call your husband, make your confessions, if he requires, the extended family to an extent, nip it in the bud. Whatever the man decides at that point, you can't force yourself on him. If he thinks that, this is unpardonable, this is unimaginable, I can no longer, both parties will need time. But the most important thing is, in the midst of all this, they should be worried about caring for the mental health of the child. That is the direct recipient of whatever decisions that come out of this. But talking about the court side,
good.
You won't call it paternity fraud. So who is suing? Is it the man saying a woman has lied to me all my life when she knew that this child was not mine? In law, we say that every crime has two elements. You have the measure, which is the intention, and you have the actus reus, which is the act in itself. So sometimes those two don't match. And for you to establish a crime, you must be able to establish both. Sometimes these women do these things unknowingly. And sometimes, they never get to make up their minds about who they want to marry. This is very common for first children. I think more often than not, because the woman may not even know she's pregnant, or she may have been with several other partners.
But can you really say a woman does this unknowingly? Can you really?
When I say unknowingly, that means that she may have actually believed that the child she's carrying is, if she's having more than one sexual partners, it will be difficult to establish who parented, which is the father to the child, which is another reason why people should be careful and take responsibility for their actions. Okay. It's a matter of choice now. You knew that this was a probability. Why would you wait till the eventuality happens before you caution yourself? You have brought in an innocent third party into this mix. So there's the emotional trauma that it creates. There's a legal part. The father can say, I want to sue this woman because she's made me spend money all my life on a child that is not mine. I don't see a father doing that anyway, because I believe that before you discovered, you must have shared a fatherly bond with that child. Sometimes children are adopted, they don't even know that these are not my biological parents for a very long time. And my bias would always be for the child. When parents find themselves in this kind of scenario, they should always remember that there is an innocent third party in the midst of all this. So the bias is for the child. Let's see how we can protect the child from this mess. Let's see how we can protect his mental health. Let the parties that are wrong take responsibility for their action. Seek how to resolve this before putting it out there. Putting it out there, especially in the courtroom, it's a permanent label on that child. I don't think that that's the best step to take.
Okay,
people may have been hurt, but there may be a better way to handle issues like
Okay, so at this point, what if the man insists? What do you think could be the solution, or what could be the final judgment? Okay, from
So
the
it depends on what he's seeking from the court. So he could go the civil suit and say, I want to be paid damages for being lied to all my life, for deceit, for misrepresentation, but when you introduce something like fraud, that's a crime.
okay.
That's a crime. That's not even the case of the man. This is the police. This is the state handling the prosecution. And of course, there will be legal consequences. There may be imprisonment. There may be option of fine. So whoever is found to have been guilty definitely will face the brunt of the law. But
Okay.
at the end of the day, before going to court, you have to decide, what am I trying to achieve? Am I trying to punish her? Am I trying to get damages? Am I trying to ridicule her? What is the intention behind that? You know. So
Okay.
a lot of things.
I think you actually answered the question I actually had here for you, because I wanted to say, is there anything like, you know, being sentenced to prison or something?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, if you're convicted of fraud, there's imprisonment term for that, depending on the law under which you have been charged. Every law that sets out a crime also provides a penalty for that crime under the law. So you would have to face a penalty for that crime.
Oh. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that answer. I mean, that was super great. Now, I want to get into the sense or the scene of distrust.
Okay.
Yes. Doctor, could that be a state or sense where the woman runs a test even before the baby is born? Or so, because actually so many couples that, somehow, see running a test as a sense of distrust. So at this point, what you have to say? Do you think that having a DNA test be introduced before a child is born, that's to actually help in the control of this very problem?
That's a very, very interesting scenario. What you're talking about doing what we call a myelosynthesis, where you take a DNA material from the fetus and then do a DNA test and see whether it matches with that of the man. So in the case that you do that and you find that it's not your biological product, what do you do? Terminate the pregnancy? So it becomes a big moral question.
Yeah.
The only times that is morally allowed is that you do an amniocentesis and you find that the baby is going to be a sickle. Some people will say it's done right now in medicine. We do amniocentesis for couples who are discordant, that's ASS. And if it's a sickler, they might decide that they don't want to continue with that pregnancy. But if it's just for paternity tests, I don't think a lot of people will buy that. The damage is also been done in terms of emotion, because once that is done, so the man is still going to say, you were faithful to me, get out of my house.
So, but I think that question you asked, I should actually go to the women out there.
Yeah,
So
so,
there's a second part to that question. What if you do the test and it's your child?
Okay.
Do you think she will happen to know that you had to do that to confirm that she's faithful?
Okay.
I don't know. For me, we have different people with different ways of doing things. Why would I want to go and do an amniocentesis to confirm that my child? Then why am I in the house with the woman?
Okay, let's see
So
that.
it's something that shouldn't even be thought about. It's completely going to destroy the fabric of marriage. Of
Okay.
living together.
Okay.
Because living together, the basic thing is trust.
Yeah.
People are bridging the trust here, but not everybody's bridging.
So, but at this point, we have a situation which is going around, which is flying around. Okay, so, what do you think? Do you think that we should advise the couples to just do that? That just take out the distrust, take out that thing and just do it. I don't really know, because I think a lot of you are seeing it from the end of, trying to break that trust
The
thing.
truth is, there will always be the trust issue. Whatever would create a scenario that makes one of the couples to request for a DNA test definitely shows that there is no trust.
Okay.
It doesn't show that there's trust in that marriage.
Okay, so are you saying we should just leave with it?
If there is no reason to check,
Okay.
if there is no basis, like if there is no very concrete reason, for example, you're not having a case of genotype drama, if I don't think there's a major change. But sometimes it may be important. For example, if a man finds out that his wife is maybe communicating with someone who is the supposed father of that child and something leaks into his knowledge, he should know for the purpose of knowing. You understand? But above all, I would say that on the side of the woman, I'm a woman and I find it really embarrassing when I see issues like this play out, that men discover that some children are not theirs because of a DNA test. If a woman has a reason to suspect that she may be carrying a child that does not belong to the father, first, she has done something that is not right morally. And I don't know why the case about aborting a child, too, I mean, it's as good as murder. It's neither here nor there for some people. But what I would say is this, everyone should take responsibility for their actions. Don't make a choice that you will later come to regret. You understand? And don't bring an innocent person into the mix. That's my bias will always be for the child that is the main involved. But I'll continue to say it because when issues like this come, yeah, it can lead to emotional breakdown, psychological breakdown. But sometimes you can be nipped in the bud. There are people that have moved past that. There are couple that, I mean, men that have had children out of wedlock, that their wives are still living with them anyway. But when it's the woman, the society doesn't accept it that way because the woman is supposed to be quote unquote modest. But there are also some cases, maybe we don't know about them, where the man would have known that this is not my child, but chooses to live on with that knowledge. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? But then, whenever things like this happen, people should take responsibility for their actions. They shouldn't try to complicate issues. If you already know that child is not for that man, why wait for him to do the DNA and confront? I heard about stories of a woman that knew that these children had not to her husband, and then she with the day the man was going for a DNA test, before they went and came back, they didn't meet her at home, she had packed her things and ran away because she couldn't live up to the truth of being confronted with what she had done. But it's really embarrassing. It's very embarrassing. And I hear that some men don't even mind too. Some men will say, "Oh, in my mind, I think I know that I'm impotent. I don't know how this woman keeps telling me she's pregnant. But because I want to enjoy being called the father, I'm not going to talk about it." Different strokes.
So
for different
basically,
folks.
exactly.
So yeah.
Impact Matters with Madima. Changing perspectives, growing the nation.
So you happen to be the women rights advocate or activist, yeah. So now, to this sense, as as everybody was saying, yes, that this cause obviously results from a woman. We were saying something the other time, and we said that that we're talking about that cause one time, and we were saying that it's everybody will blame a woman because
They bring out the
there's
products.
exactly
Yeah.
because good. So well, now let's put that. Good. Now regarding that very end, yes, at which this fault it's always yes, it's from the woman. What advice do you basically have for the women out there?
Well, the advice is the advice any person that loves a woman will give to her. If you marry, stick to your man. I know there are some extraneous occasions that a man will stray, a woman will stray. A good example, I always say, we're all human beings, we make mistakes. But there are certain mistakes that can be very costly. We try as much as possible not to make them. A good example for people who do not live together. A man maybe is a soldier, is fighting a war hundreds of thousands of miles away, and then the wife is there 1 year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And nowadays, this abroad marriage where you see a man married to a woman for 4 or 5 years, the woman hasn't seen her husband, and then there's a slang, but no good. And they start trying to have an affair because of their own emotional upkeep. But the important thing here is to know that there are consequences. It's much more on the woman because, like we have already established here, you produce the products of that infidelity. Whereas the man, nothing concerns him. He can sleep with about 100 women. So far as they can even have babies. The only thing they can accuse the man, you have a baby, the man will say, "Are you sure it's my baby?" The paternity test there is to show that you have to have some responsibility. It doesn't affect the man's marriage, except a woman will not say you've been cheating around me and want to leave the marriage. It is very, very rare. So my advice to women is to be more careful, especially when you're in multiple relationships before you settle down that this is the man you want. So make sure if you are pregnant, you might have to probably make a decision, and that decision might be hard to say to the man, you have to wait. You have to wait, let me have this baby. It's a tough thing, it's a tough sell. But the important thing is if you're in a multiple relationship. I'm a family planning advocate. I chair the management committee of social development and family planning. So I believe any woman that is already menstruating should start one form of contraception on their hand, whether you're in marriage or not. So far as you're going to be having sex, it's important to make sure you protect yourself from having a pregnancy that is out of wedlock unless you want to keep the baby. So that way you protect yourself from this sort of emotional imbalance. But having said that, I think the majority of the listeners, I don't even think that most of the infidelity born is actually the ones that come before the man, before at the start of the marriage. Yeah. So most of them are actually an ongoing, I would say, marriage concern, and then something happens in between, and the woman will stray, and then when she strays, because she's sleeping with her husband, she's sleeping with the other guy, not protected in her own mind, in her own believability mind. This must be for my husband, and then wow, it comes out it's not. So it's a big problem for us that advocate for women. My friends used to make it, I see the women there, they still not saying that. See if the men are not doing worse things, but they bring products. So my advice is to be more careful. I'm not here to judge anybody. Everybody makes a mistake, but there are some mistakes that are very costly. Another thing also, science. Science occasionally might not be so absolute, especially when you consider those things I talked about, personal evolution, calibration of the machine, and maybe the reagents. They can just give a false positive. And then that means you also have to watch where you go to check. You understand? And finally, something that can just, like I mentioned before, something that you're not responsible for, neither your husband is responsible for. Maybe just a careless nose in the maternity session, switching your baby.
So therefore, nurses too should also be advised.
Not just not all healthcare workers. Exactly. Everybody must be careful. It's everything that goes around goes along the stratum or strata of medical care. So that's my advice.
Thank you very much, sir.
The law does not know whether you're a woman or you're a man. The law is blind, and when you see the symbol of justice, it's veiled. It doesn't care. Whoever faults the law gets the penalty of that law. It's not about gender. If you fault the law, you get the penalty. So don't fault the law. Don't commit fraud, basically. Because if somebody charges you for criminal, criminal action, you will face the course of the law. It's as simple as that. Whether you're male, whether you're female, even men that commit adultery and do violently criminal offenses are there. If someone decides to pick it up and charge them to court, they will also have, to face the course of the law. So it doesn't matter whether you're a man or woman. Don't do the law.
This program is proudly brought to you by Montage Africa Media.